Hello and welcome to week 6 in technology and society and introducing housing. I was actually going to do, just because I'm designing this course as I go, I was actually going to do housing and transportation together, and then got into the housing unit and there was just enough there to create its own chapter. So I think the next chapter is going to be transportation. But certainly lots to say about housing here. I introduced this chapter talking about housing and home and that sort of socio-cultural aspect of where we live, our personal space, and what that means to us in terms of our our values, our goals, our status in society in terms of the kind of place that we live in. And that's really the focus of the first discussion this week, is to think about where you have lived, apartment, home, back of your car, whatever it is that you've, places where you've lived, and what has that expressed in terms of your status, your goals, your values, and whatnot. Getting into the socio-cultural aspect of what housing means. I mean, in the rehabilitation world and in the anti-poverty world, there's two main tracks of focal points in terms of addressing the notion of rehabilitation, getting people off the streets, let's say, or from disability into ability, and what all the different avenues that is about. And the two avenues, one is work first, meaning individuals should be helped to get to work first, which gives meaning to their lives and whatnot. And the other one is housing first. Now, chicken or the egg kind of thing. It's one of those two things. Could a homeless person have a job? Yes. Could a person who's in a home not have a job? Yeah. Those kinds of things. But depending on your role within the rehabilitation world, those are two areas that have shown to be, you need to start here. The person needs to have a place to be. They just have to have it. The person has to have meaning in their lives. It's one of those things that will then lead to progress in all the other areas of their life. So I see this chapter as a real reinforcement of the importance of place, the importance of having a place. I've been traveling over the last couple weeks. I've been going to different places, but definitely spent a few days out in Oregon. I had a great time walking around the city, but also participating in a wonderful conference and presenting and meeting new friends and colleagues. And yet I wasn't home. I was in a hotel. I was in, eating out all the time. And then I came home and I literally made myself peanut butter toast when I got home, because it's my comfort food. And it was 2:00 in the morning, and there I am slathering on the peanut butter, and I felt at home. What is it about having a place where my stuff is, where my most important relationships are, where I'm feeling most myself and comfortable, and how important that is? Sort of a very poignant example of that particular aspect, that sociological and psychological aspect of home. I then go over, in the chapter, there's where technology has come along and changed these things. We look at the history of housing, which is largely a history of materials. So there's sort of two parts there where I talk about the history of housing, but then you can see how that relates to materials. And then I get right into materials, and I even give you a very interesting infographic. It's an infographic, can be really, really tall and very thin. So when you actually click on that, it opens up in your browser. It just looks like a little stripe, and you got to zoom in to make it, and then you can go down, and it's an infographic that traces the introduction of new building materials throughout history. And then I end up the chapter with, what's the future going to look like? What technologies are going to be coming out? New building materials, but also new concepts of what it means to have a house. And what that's. So I bring you to a website, we look at future materials, and we enter into our second discussion. That's all let's do this week, just 2 discussions. The second discussion has to do with looking at those housing options of the future, including the one that I include in the attention getter, which is under construction right now, which is the line, which is going to be built in Saudi Arabia, and it's a 100 and some odd mile building long, very, very tall, very narrow building. Some idea about how future housing might be, currently under construction. So that's an interesting project. There's, of course, critiques to that. And then at the end, there's the website that I send you that has ideas about some of them which are very current, like tiny houses and those and apartment buildings that are modular, and they kind of, you order what you want for your apartment, and then they attach that piece to a larger structure. These kinds of things are already happening, have been happening for a while. But are these the future? And what kind of housing would you like to live in? What pluses and minuses? Would you live in the line? Would you live in an underwater town? Those kinds of things that are kind of having you play around with the idea as to which one of these you would find attractive, what are the pros and cons, those kinds of things that get into some futurist thinking. So that's our chapter on housing. I anticipate the next one's going to be transportation. I've already got sort of all my materials lined up to build that one. And I thank you for going along with this journey with me. I've been having an absolutely fantastic time learning some of this stuff and putting the sociological ideas together with resources that are highly technology oriented and may or may not touch on sociology itself, although the line does. I mean, it's almost pure sociology, and then the other sites too. There's this notion of how close people can be, how much space does an individual need. Each one of these things that talk deeply about the fields of sociology, social psychology, interactionist theory, and all those things that are near and dear to me. So that's housing. So enjoy this chapter. I look forward to your participation in both of these discussions. They went live last night, and so not as many days, and I apologize for not getting these things early. I'm still off. I'm going to work on getting back into the trend of getting these things done so you have them on Monday morning. So enjoy this week, and I will see you in the discussion boards, and take care.